two anxiety medicines, same drug family, similar purpose, yet one of them is far more likely to pull people into a cycle they never saw coming. Millions of people are prescribed Clonazepam and Alprazolam for anxiety and panic attacks every year. Both can calm the brain within hours. But behind that relief, doctors have been warning about something much darker for years. Some say Alprazolam feels more addictive because it works incredibly fast. Others believe Clonazepam becomes harder to stop because it slowly builds dependence over time. So which one is actually more addictive? The answer is far more complicated than most people realize. Most people think addiction is only about how strong a drug feels. But that is only part of the story. What really changes everything is how fast the medicine reaches the brain, how quickly the calming effect appears, and what happens after that feeling starts disappearing. That is where Clonazepam and Alprazolam begin to separate in ways most people never expect. One drug may create faster emotional cravings. The other may slowly build physical dependence so quietly that people do not even realize it is happening until they try to stop. And that is when things can become frightening. Some people experience panic attacks worse than before. Others struggle with shaking, insomnia, overwhelming anxiety, and in severe cases, dangerous withdrawal reactions. By the end of this video, you will understand why these two medicines create different addiction patterns, why one is often considered riskier for misuse, and why doctors are extremely careful when patients try to come off either one. Clonazepam and Alprazolam belong to a powerful group of medications called benzodiazepines. Doctors prescribe them mainly for anxiety, panic attacks, severe stress, and sometimes sleep-related problems. For many people, these medicines can feel almost life-changing in the beginning. The constant fear becomes quieter. The racing thoughts slow down. The body finally relaxes after days or even months of tension. That is why millions of people around the world use these medications every year. But even though both drugs belong to the same family, they do not behave the same way inside the body. Alprazolam usually acts faster and fades faster. Clonazepam works more slowly and stays active longer. And that small difference changes everything. It affects how the brain responds, how dependence develops, and how difficult stopping the medication can become later. On the surface, they seem similar, but the addiction risk behind them can feel very different once long-term use begins. To understand why these medicines can become addictive, you first need to understand what they do inside the brain. Benzodiazepines increase the effect of a calming brain chemical called GABA. Think of GABA like the brain's natural brake pedal. It slows things down. It quiets panic. It reduces fear signals. That is why people often feel calm, sleepy, relaxed, or emotionally lighter after taking these drugs. For someone struggling with intense anxiety, that relief can feel almost unbelievable. But the human brain adapts very quickly. When calming chemicals are boosted again and again, the brain slowly starts depending on that outside help to feel normal. At first, a person may simply feel attached to the relief. Later, the body itself may begin relying on the medication physically, and that is where dependence starts turning into something much more dangerous. But not every benzodiazepine creates this cycle in the exact same way. Some create stronger cravings much faster than others. One reason Alprazolam has such a strong reputation for addiction is because of how fast it works. Many people feel the calming effect very quickly after taking it. The panic slows down. The chest tightness eases. The racing thoughts suddenly become quieter. And that fast emotional relief creates a powerful connection in the brain. The brain begins learning that this pill can instantly remove discomfort. That is how cravings can begin forming much faster. But the bigger problem is what happens afterward. Alprazolam also leaves the body relatively quickly, so when the calming effect fades, anxiety can return suddenly, and sometimes even more intensely than before. This is called rebound anxiety. And for some people, it creates a cycle where they feel pulled toward taking another dose sooner and sooner. Doctors worry about this pattern because it increases misuse risk. In many cases, it is not about getting high. It is simply about escaping the crash that comes when the effect disappears. Clonazepam works differently from alprazolam, and that difference can make it seem safer at first. It usually enters the system more slowly and stays in the body much longer. Because of that, many people describe it as smoother, steadier, and less intense emotionally. There are often fewer dramatic highs and crashes during the day, and compared to alprazolam, some users may feel fewer immediate cravings, but that does not mean the addiction risk disappears. In fact, clonazepam can become dangerous in a quieter way. Because it feels more stable, people may continue taking it daily for months or even years without realizing how much their brain and body have adapted to it. Over time, tolerance can slowly build. The original dose may not feel as effective anymore, and when someone eventually tries to stop, they suddenly discover how dependent the body has become. Sometimes the strongest dependence is not loud or obvious. Sometimes it develops silently in the background for years. This is the part many people never expect until it happens to them. Withdrawal from benzodiazepines can become extremely difficult, and in some situations, even dangerous. People may experience severe anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, shaking, sweating, heart pounding, nausea, or overwhelming fear. In serious cases, withdrawal can even trigger seizures. Alprazolam withdrawal often begins faster because the drug leaves the body quickly. That rapid drop can create intense rebound symptoms that feel sudden and overwhelming. Some people describe it as their anxiety returning at full force within hours. Clonazepam withdrawal can feel different. Because the drug stays in the body longer, symptoms may appear more slowly. But the process can sometimes last longer too, and that long-lasting discomfort can become emotionally exhausting. This is why doctors strongly warn against stopping either medication suddenly without medical guidance. Most patients need a slow, tapering process so the brain has time to adjust safely instead of crashing into withdrawal all at once. One of the most important things to understand is that addiction does not happen the same way for everyone. Two people can take the exact same medicine at the exact same dose and have completely different experiences. One person may use it carefully for a short period and stop without major problems. Another may begin developing dependence surprisingly fast. A lot of factors can influence that risk. Higher doses, daily use, long treatment periods, severe anxiety disorders, trauma history, stress levels, and even genetics can all change how the brain responds. Alcohol or other substance use can raise the danger even more. Emotional pain also plays a major role. Sometimes people are not chasing pleasure at all. They are simply trying to escape fear, panic, or emotional suffering. And that is what makes benzodiazepine dependence so complicated. Addiction is rarely only about the drug itself. It is often connected to the person's mental state, life situation, and how desperately they want relief from what they are feeling inside. So after everything, which medication is actually considered more addictive? For most experts, alprazolam is usually seen as having a higher risk for misuse and addiction. The biggest reason is speed. It works fast, creates rapid emotional relief, and leaves the body relatively quickly. That combination can train the brain to crave repeated doses much sooner. The cycle of relief followed by rebound anxiety can become incredibly hard for some people to escape. But that does not mean clonazepam is harmless. Clonazepam may not create the same intense short-term cravings for many users, but it can still produce powerful physical dependence over time, especially with long-term daily use. In other words, the addiction patterns are different, not necessarily absent. One drug may pull people into a faster cycle of craving and misuse. The other may quietly build dependence so slowly that people only realize it when they try to stop. And that hidden difference is what makes this comparison far more complicated than most people think. Neither of these medications is completely harmless. Clonazepam and Alprazolam can genuinely help people struggling with severe anxiety and panic attacks when they are used carefully under medical supervision. But both drugs can also become difficult to stop once the brain and body start depending on them. Alprazolam may create faster cravings for many users, while clonazepam can quietly build long-term dependence over time. And that is what makes benzodiazepines so dangerous for some people. The biggest risk often begins when temporary relief slowly turns into something the brain feels it cannot function without anymore. If you found this video helpful, subscribe for more simple and honest medical comparisons that explain the science behind medicines in a way anyone can understand.